Do you know if Jace is coming? He said he was, so, okay.
All right, thanks everyone. I apologize for the delay. As you can see, we're a little light on folks tonight, so we wanted to make sure we had enough folks to get through this. So before we begin, this is a reminder that this is also a remote meeting and teleconference using Zoom pursuant to 1 MRSA Section 403-A. Welcome to the Sanford Planning Board meeting of May 21st, 2025. The meeting will now come to order. This is a public proceeding. Unless the board specifically votes to go into executive session, you have the right to hear everything that is being said and to look at all the exhibits that are offered. Please notify the chair if you're unable to hear or see something. Please know that if any planning board members have potential conflicts of interest of which they are aware, they will disclose the conflict prior to the board initiating a hearing or action on an application. All persons speaking will be asked to state your name and address and then proceed. At the sole discretion of the chair, public testimony may be limited to 5 minutes per speaker. For each item, the applicant will be asked to describe the project. Thereafter, the chair will ask for proponents of the project to speak, followed by opponents, and then those who are neither for nor against, but who may want to ask a question or make a general comment. Everyone who wants will have an opportunity to speak to the board through the chair. Any questions must go to and through the chair, who will then decide at what point to either ask staff or the applicant to respond. The chair may wait until after testimony has concluded to seek answers to any questions that are raised by the public or board members. Please note that rudeness, uncivil behavior, clapping, cheering, booing, etc. will not be tolerated, and if these behaviors occur, the chair at his sole discretion may terminate the hearing and reschedule for another date. In addition, the chair at his sole discretion will limit repetitious comments, though it is entirely appropriate for an individual to indicate that he or she agrees with the previous speaker. Prior to closing the public hearing, the chair will ask if there are any new comments, and then the applicant will be allowed to make a single rebuttal in response to the testimony that was provided. Once the public hearing portion of the meeting is closed, the chair will accept no additional public comment. However, a member of the board at the chair's discretion may ask the applicant or a member of the public to respond to a question. This will not reopen public comment. Planning board decisions are based solely on whether an applicant has provided sufficient evidence to meet the requirements of local, state, and federal laws. In this regard, public testimony is most effective when it considers the impacts of a project in light of Sanford subdivision, site plan, shoreland, or zoning ordinances, and any other relevant regulations. After the board discusses the merits of each project, it will vote on written findings of facts. Since the findings may substantially affect any appeals rights, also as a matter of courtesy, the board asks that those attending the meeting not leave until the board has adopted the findings for the project in which you are interested. After the planning board makes its final decision, any reconsideration by the board must be made at the next regularly scheduled meeting. If anyone wishes to appeal the board's final decision, he or she must do so within 30 days. The city's ordinances and comprehensive plan are available for viewing on the city's website and in the Planning and Development Department's office at 919 Main Street. Remember, this is a public proceeding. You have the right to hear and see what is happening, and we welcome public participation. Excuse me. Okay, so the first item on our agenda is Sanford Housing Authority Heritage Crossing. At the applicant's request, this item is going to remain on the table. We're going to swap the next two. So we're going to first move on to new business, file number 2025-17-R12-20-SP, Sanford Fire and EMS Headquarters. Oh, are we jumping? My apologies. We're going to jump to the fourth item on the agenda, file number 2025, TAC 18, TAC R18, A16, TAC 16, Ultimate Airport Layout Plan.
What would you like to pull up? Sure, yep. What an unexpected treat. I thought I was going to be last.
Just so the audience knows, we're reversing the schedule because the planning board member that is absent has already heard this presentation once, so he will be able to vote on it even though he misses the first 5 minutes when he's arriving. That way we don't postpone everybody for that much longer.
Thanks, Jamie. I guess, yeah, you.
Take it away.
So-
Do the description. Good evening, my name's Allison Navia. I'm the airport manager of our Sanford Seacoast Regional Airport. This is all going to seem very familiar because I did a preliminary presentation on this a little while ago, and now we just have everything finalized and approved by the FAA. So if I could share the presentation. There we are. All right, so it's the ultimate airport layout plan. It sounds as cool as it is, ultimate. So the business plan for the airport, this was written in 2016. We updated it in 2021. Probably have to update it again next year. There's two big goals in there. One is to maintain a high level of safety, security, and maintenance, and the second is to maintain and foster financial self-sufficiency. So with financial self-sufficiency, we're doing really good on that one. I went through all of this in more detail last time. More of the illustration is just the graph to show that since we've started implementing a lot of these policies, tax increment financing, a lot of those kind of incentives at the airport, we've grown our revenues quite a bit. The expenses kind of go up with that, and that's mostly getting a full-time airport manager for the first time and payroll expenses and things of that nature. So we've surpassed that. The goal was to obtain financial self-sufficiency, and we did that once the solar project went live, and then, which was part of the old master plan. And then after that point, then we've now continued in the black year over year. So that was to show that how we're working on that goal. So underneath each one of those goals in the business plan, there's objectives, and one of the objectives was to do the airport master plan and plan for the orderly and appropriate development of the airfield. So it's very similar. It's like zoning on a micro level just on the airport, just to do with different types of aeronautical uses, where they're going to go, how circulation's going to work, if we need new gates, if we have to move fencing, what kind of things that we'll be looking for, and the highest and best use for different parcels. So when you look at different things around the airport, the most valuable commercial development is anything that's included as part of the fence because it has airside, landside access versus a hangar or any kind of a building that's deep inside the property that you would need access to go through and then drive through an air operations area to get to. So what even is an airport master plan? It's a study. So we've been working on this one for about 2 years now from the time we started getting the grant funding and then got the narrative through. The thing that took the longest was the forecast, and that's because FAA has to approve the forecast before you can move on, and our forecast is so much higher than the national average with growth that it took them like almost 8 months just to approve the forecast so that we could show the amount of growth that we're showing in here. So they look at all the inventory, then they apply that forecast. We look at the facility requirements as far as like square footage of apron space for the types of aircraft that are using the airport. And then for each one of these things, we evaluated alternatives. So you can see that whole process in that narrative that accompanies this if you feel like going through and reading that whole thing. Cheat code is just to go like to chapter 4 and just read the recommendations of each alternative because that summarizes what we came up with and why we're recommending and going forward with the choice that we made. If you want to look into all the details of how we came up with that, that's in those previous chapters. The other deliverable besides the narrative is the airport layout plan set. So that gives the existing conditions. There's the ultimate airport layout plan, which is really busy. It shows all 1,300 acres of the property. And then we did zoomed in maps of the east side, the west side, and then kind of like the southwest side. There's also a data sheet. So there's a wind analysis of why the runways point the way that they do. And then all of the data on taxiway widths and lengths and takeoff distance available and all that kind of good stuff. The last piece is the Exhibit A, the property map. That's the official property map of the airport, and that shows a table that has every parcel, the map lot number, when the deed was transferred, how it was acquired, and it also shows any easements, as well as aeronautical use and non-aeronautical use that's either approved or planned for in the future. So this is just an example to show you of one of the exercises we did when we were looking at alternatives, where we labeled different kinds of vehicle traffic to see where the vehicles were traveling on the airport, to then evaluate where we would put gates in the future to try to prevent The pieces in the middle where you have vehicles that are driving across an active ramp, which is basically just a fancy way of saying an aircraft parking area, so that you're not having that potential for conflicts. So we did a bunch of things along these lines to come up with the final recommendation. So apologize the way the PDF printed on this. It has all sorts of different layers of squares, but this gives you an idea just in summary. So any of the little orange rectangles and squares, those are existing buildings. Anything that's in green is forecast in the next maybe 5 years, and anything in purple is 5+. Anything that's that lighter, like kind of lime green, that's future new pavement. The big pink area up in the corner, that triangle, that's the Sanford firing range, the Fish and Game firing range. So that's carved out on this plan specifically as a preliminary check mark to FAA that we're going to plan to sell that land. So we need to release it from all of its federal obligations. That involves releasing it from all the FAA rules, the deed requirements that we have on that property to use it only for aeronautical use. And then I also have to do a request to the Department of Defense. So the Department of Defense has this thing called the National Emergency Use Provision that applies to the property also, where if it's a case of national emergency or war, the federal government can come back in and take over the whole airport again to use it for those purposes. So you have to get a release from FAA and you have to get a release from the Department of Defense to be able to use the property or to release it to sell it. So lots of paperwork for that one. So that's the summary of what we had to do years ago to be able to let the solar development happen on the airport also, because that's non-aeronautical use. So that's the quick overview of that. On the east side plan, to zoom in a little bit, just to orient you, the road across the top is Route 109, and then you can see Airport Road comes off from that. The darker gray is future roadways that we have proposed. So there is a little check in there to see if it was ever possible to buy the parcels, that open field that's across from the signalized intersection at Walmart and Lowe's, and maybe have an airport entrance there. That would facilitate, one of the things that we don't have at Sanford is a large clear span hangar that you could put a jet inside of. So there's nowhere for a jet to go in inclement weather, and there's nowhere to put it inside in the winter. So we're missing that at our facility right now. We also have no de-icing capability, so that's why in the winter we have a lot less of that type of traffic. So the idea with this would be where that location would be. So that lime green big apron there would have de-icing capability. There'd be in-pavement catchment of the effluent so that we would be able to truck that off and get it treated. And you could have some kind of, those big boxes would be kind of giant hangars that you could put larger aircraft inside. The other little hangars, those are shown on there, as well as additional parking in the parking lot at 199 Airport Road for the FBO and the restaurant, and then a new gate over on Gate 5 over there on the side. And stop me anytime, I'm like ripping through this. So on the west side, this is the side where the airport's maintenance shop is. There's a lot of new development taking place over there, so at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of these buildings are being constructed this year. And then within the past week, I've had 4 more single box hangar tire kickers coming and wanting to have site visits and see what it takes to build a hangar. So I'm really glad that we did this project, because a lot of these are coming online, and we know just where to put different types of people who want different size hangars for different types of uses. So this is really going to come in handy for that. So the west side is a little bit more, there's a lot of those long skinny hangars. If you picture T's back to back, like airplanes backed up to each other, that's what the insides of those look like. So those each hold 10 units, so 10 aircraft back to back on each of those long skinny ones. And then the larger box hangars, those are more of what you'd call like a corporate hangar, or you could have a bunch of different aircraft in there, but they facilitate a larger aircraft. So we separated those out and put those along Taxiway Charlie, which is our large main taxiway that's set well back from the taxiway, so that if they pulled their jet out or their larger aircraft, they're still well clear of the taxiway so that it could still be used. That kind of development wouldn't be appropriate over on the east side, where everything's really kind of jam-packed in there and it's much busier. So we separated out those types of development. This is the totally new part of the plan, so this wasn't on the previous master plan. It wasn't shown at all because we didn't anticipate this many hangars were going to get built this quickly. So this is showing if the little corner there that you doesn't have like a satellite overlay is where the ball fields are. So this would be on the other side of the fence of where the airport ball fields are. I believe it's Gatehouse Road would continue straight to be able to access the airport, and we could put some hangars along Foxtrot right there on that back corner. So if everything else fills up, we can start working on infrastructure and everything to get over onto that end. And then we also show a couple of hangars on the southwest ramp that doesn't have anything built on it yet. So the idea for there would be hopefully to convince the helicopter flight school to move over there, and that would separate and segregate out that traffic that's very different in operation than the rest of the traffic on the airport. This is the Exhibit A. So this is that official property map. The table over there is what I described that shows the tax map lot number for each one. It shows that non-aeronautical future release, and it shows the green is potential land acquisition, and then the kind of apricot color is avigation easements. So if we could acquire those easements, that basically just tells the property owner that there's going to be aircraft flying over that property on a regular basis, so you can expect noise and these types of things. So those are all shown there. You can see the little hash marks in the whole southwest part of the airport. That's what was released for the solar project, that in the infield. And then that top corner adjacent to the pink area, it has a different kind of hash mark, and that's a DOT conservation easement that got put on the airport property as a result of the high school development. So that's for sleepy dusky wing moths and scrub oaks. And that's the plan. So this is kind of neat. I found this master plan from 1976 in the archives, and you can kind of see a little bit of the difference of what the airport looks like then versus in about 3 years ago, an aerial shot. So the purpose of this plan, it's not an exact plan of exactly what building sizes would be, but it's the approximate location of where they would go, and it gives the check mark for any kind of FAA participation and approval of any of the projects should they be developed. It also just gives the city in concept an idea of how we want to develop the airport, and then when the developer comes and they want to do each individual development, then it would go to site plan review at that point per the new ordinance. That's what I got.
All right, thank you very much. Before the public hearing, is there anything else staff would like to add?
Just a reminder to the planning board and information for the public, the master plan isn't actually approving the construction of any of these buildings. This is approving essentially the concept of areas of development, nodes of development on the airport in the next period of time. So even though she shows hangars, that doesn't mean those hangars can automatically get built. They still have to come before the review process to construct those buildings. So this is just a tool that the FAA uses to help guide the development process in the airport in the near future.
Thank you for that clarification, Jamie. Okay, I'll open the public hearing. If there's anyone who would like to speak in as a proponent of the ultimate airport layout plan. Hearing none. Anyone who would like to speak in opposition? Anybody who would like to ask a question or make a general comment? Okay, I'll declare the public hearing closed and take it up for planning board discussion. We've heard this a few times. Is there anything that the planning board is concerned with? You know, as Jamie said, any project, and Allison mentioned it too, any project that comes as part of this or following this will still go to site plan review through via the new ordinance, and it could still come to us if staff determines that it's necessary. But okay, Do we have findings for this?
No findings, but I do have a suggested motion.
Okay.
The planning board accepts the information in the May 6, 2025 summer report and approve the airport ultimate layout plan as presented.
Motion to approve.
Second?
Any discussion?
Nope.
All in favor? 5-0. Thank you. Okay, so we'll go back to item number 2, file number 2025, TAC 03, TAC I-38, TAC 2, TAC PW, Clark Avenue and Camp Street Private Way.
I just want to divulge that Becca and I serve on the Mainers Board together and the Chamber of Commerce Board together, but I have no financial interest in any of her projects.
I should probably make that same disclosure. I serve on the maintenance board with her as well.
No, I appreciate that. As you said, there's no financial mechanism there, so I don't see a conflict. Does anybody else have a concern? Nope. Okay. Jamie, could you orient us on this, please?
Yes, this is a private way request. This originated, you guys had seen this prior as a private way / subdivision request. They have now withdrew the subdivision request and came forth as just a private way with some utilities shown on the private way. It came out of site plan with half a dozen or so minor conditions. They have addressed most of them at this point.
Okay, thank you. Is the applicant?
Sure. Good evening. My name is Carl Beal, consulting engineer, here with Rebecca LaPierre with Red LLC, that are requesting the approval of private way improvements on Clark and Camp Streets, 2 paper streets off of Boothby Ave. Like Jamie said, there are no further divisions of her property, Lot 2, at this time. The existing right-of-ways, paper streets, are 50 feet wide. We are proposing new private ways for 500 feet along Clark and Camp Streets combined. The private ways will be constructed to Sanford local street standards to allow or support future developments of the current lot. But at this time, we're not doing that. We're just providing a larger roadway, private way, to allow more options in the future. The ways are 20 feet wide with 2-foot shoulders on either side. We have proposed a sidewalk on one side of Clark Avenue. That was discussed at the last planning board meeting on this project. So one side only. Public water and public power utilities are going to be installed on the ways. No sewer is proposed at this time. That would be done with the on-site septic system as designed and needed for future development. Stormwater management has been designed to control the runoff from Clark Avenue, and also for up to 8,900 square feet of future development on Lot 2, should that occur. We did provide a road maintenance agreement. We provided a water main easement deed that the Sanford Water District requested. And we designed emergency vehicle turnarounds that would support the Sanford fire trucks turning at the Clark and Camp Street intersection, turning around. Existing trees will be protected along the private ways. We do not propose any plantings, additional plantings at this time. We did provide a performance guarantee construction cost estimate, and that was submitted to the staff. And we believe that all site plan review comments have been addressed. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Before I open the public hearing, is there anything additional staff would like to add?
Sure, I can walk us through a couple things. So this private way is located in the urban zone, which does allow the planning board to allow up to 10 residential units on a private way in the urban zone if it's granted a site plan approval, which is what we're here for tonight. If the private way is paved, if the width of the right-of-way is adequate to ensure that there is adequate area to accommodate drainage and other improvements, and if all other standards are in conformance with requirements for private ways in in the zoning chapter as well as the subdivision chapter, and that the final plan for the private way is recorded with the registry. At this time, the applicant is just pursuing the private way plan and no longer pursuing residential development off of the private way. So there's a couple items that are just kind of within my memo that I updated for you all at the planning board as a note in the instance that any of the lots with access from this private way are developed at a future date. So we're not here to talk about any residential development, just the private way. So the first note is that they did update their plans to kind of list out on a table of contents which of the sheets have been omitted, because there have been previous sheets, that showed multifamily or single-family development and a subdivision at the end of the private way. That is not being pursued at this time, so those sheets have been omitted from the packet. We do have one update that I requested. I'm sorry I didn't catch it before the site plan. It's just that your note on the private way plan says that it would provide access for 10 new dwelling units, and it should be 10 total dwelling units, because there are 2 lots that are showing driveway access, and those 2 count as part of the 10. So we want to make sure any future developers understand that there's only 8 additional units that would be allowed, as it's currently drawn. The turning truck movement plan has been updated, and the fire department did sign off on that. They showed which truck was used for that maneuver, so they've met the emergency access standards. We've made a note about the solid waste pickup, because it's important to know for any future developers that the city's private waste contractor will not enter onto a private way to pick up trash. And so depending on what is proposed in the future, if it's a single-family house, they would have to bring their trash to the end of the private way onto the public way of Boothby Ave. Or if it's more than 4 dwelling units in the future, then they would have to set up some kind of private contracting service to remove their own trash. So that's just in my memo so that it's memorialized. As the applicant indicated, they're not proposing landscaping at this time because there are trees on site, and they have shown on their plan that they will not be cutting those trees. They'll be maintained. If in the future someone comes in and clear cuts that prior to development, they will have to then update the private way plan and include landscaping trees, because we require trees along roadways. We're just suggesting that they retain the existing trees as they are. The Water District has signed off on plans and the easement documentation. There's no sewer currently proposed, but there is a sewer line within the vicinity, within the 200-foot radius, basically, of some of these parcels, which would require connecting to sewer. So that would be something that a future developer would have to either update this plan to add a sewer main, or there is a sewer line from an abutting property that they could have a sewer easement put in place for. So the applicant has decided to allow a future developer to make that decision. And then the final 2 comments are actually for our Assistant City Engineer, Mr. Matthew Preventure, as far as stormwater management and the snow storage areas to ensure that those have been adequately accommodated. The stormwater management plan that has been submitted accounts for the private way as it's depicted and some amount of development in the future. But again, if a future developer comes in, they may have to amend that plan in order to account for their development. So Matt, was there anything else about the snow storage areas?
They were removed from the swale, which can cause issues certainly in like the early spring when the snowbanks are still there, but we're getting rain and the swales need to be used. So That's been eliminated. All the snow storage is basically at the end of the roads now, which is better for drainage purposes. And then the note was updated with the impervious area that's been accounted for the level spreader. And like you said, it's just kind of, they're ahead of the game with whoever comes through to develop on the lots later on. Because part of the impervious area that they'll be adding is already accounted for with infrastructure that will be in place. So, what's up?
Okay, great. Thank you. So I'm here to answer any questions that you might have as it relates to this project, and maybe if there was some confusion at all with the change from a subdivision to a private way only plan.
Okay, so after the planning, when we take it up, if we have any questions,
If
we'll
you have
come back to you.
questions.
Okay, I'll declare the public hearing open. If there's anyone who would like to speak as a proponent for this private way development. Okay, anyone who would like to speak in opposition?
I'm sorry, I apologize. Am I supposed to be addressing our opposition and then asking questions at the same time?
So you can ask questions. We won't necessarily answer them right
after.
away, but we will make note of them and try to, and then we'll have them as part of our discussion. So as you get started, if you just state your name and address, please.
So my name is Kelly Murray. My partner Lance Upham and I own the property at 9 Boothby Ave. So we would like to state for the record that we are opposed to this plan of turning the paper streets of Clark Ave and Camp Street into a private way. There are numerous concerns we have with the project moving forward. We've lived in our house for 4.5 years, our neighbors for 19 years. With part of the road, part of what's considered the paper road, I can show you with the photo, it's not just the whole road, there is land here that we've been caring for. Our neighbors have been parking on the land, so if there was an easement granted with widening this, we would lose quite a bit on either side. So our concerns with that would be, parking, the fact that for a number of years, we've been taking care of this property. As you can imagine, if we didn't mow and trim, it wouldn't look good right on the end of the road. So we've had to care for this property. We've had to shovel, plow, snow blow. It's time, it's physical labor we've had to put into caring for this property. Wear and tear on equipment that we've purchased to care for the property. There is also, the fact that with a sidewalk coming in, I understand maybe it's a 20-foot curb cut. Our driveway, our cars are horizontal. 20 feet doesn't give us exactly enough room to come in and access our parking spots because of the way everything is laid out. So we're also concerned in the winter, could this create a problem with trying to get our driveway plowed? This could put a burden on us in the winter for plowing and maintaining our property as well. And then part of it, our other separate parcel of land that is here, the sidewalk would run across and block that in. Now, I understand that if we were to sell or try to build, there could be a curb cut done or something to that effect, but then are we relying on whoever owns the private way to do this? Or, there could be complications there that arise with that as well that we're concerned about. It would definitely unreasonably limit our access to our property, us and our neighbors. And then, so a few questions we have that we wanted to address. We understand that with the private way, we'd be granted either an easement or a right-of-way so we could access our driveways and be able to park and everything. But what kind of legal issues could that could arise in the future if someone else buys this and owns the private way? And then if that backlot doesn't get sold, who retains the rights to the private way? These are all issues that are coming up. And then most importantly, our biggest question for the board would be, It appears that Sanford does not own the private ways. They do not own Camp or Clark. They do not own the fee simple interest in the road. So if Sanford does not own the road, how can they make a determination as to what happens with this paper street if they don't own it? You're going to grant someone an easement to come in and do all this if you don't own the road. This is what we're trying to understand, is how could this happen? If Sanford does not own the road, how can you make that determination as to what happens with it and to turn it into a private way with an HOA and turn it over to someone else? So we are asking the board, we are letting it known that we are objecting to this plan moving forward, and we would like the planning board to consider all of these factors before making a decision. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in opposition?
We are Mark and Angela Kellaway from 13 Boothby Ave, the other side of the Clark Ave, and we're here to oppose this proposed road once again. And again, she already talked about the fact that the town does not own this road. We actually found evidence of that today in searching deeds for the town, and we have those. And we would like to know why this is even up in front of a board if you don't own the land that you're talking about, and why the decision would be made based on that. But I have a statement written that I would like to read. We are here to strongly oppose the proposed development of the paper road known as Clark Ave into a private road. Even though the development of the subdivision lot I-38-2 was denied by this committee previously or withdrawn, Red LLC continues to try to push an agenda to have Clark Ave turned into a private road owned by them. They have no real plan of what will happen for the lot in the future. And we recently became aware that the town does not own Clark Ave. Since we are not a business or real estate agents ourselves, we were always unaware of this road could ever be developed. We would never have purchased our home to begin with, knowing what we know now. Red LLC has knowledge, power, and money that the abutting homeowners do not. We feel we should have been offered the opportunity to take over Clark Ave, since we have been caring for it for the past 19 years, and we have a pre-existing older home abutting it. Making Clark Ave a private road will likely cause us and our neighbors at 9 Boothby Ave many legal and logistical issues to access our driveways, yards, and garage. We have concerns with our retaining wall that ends within the area of Clark Ave. If this road is built, it's going to cut into that retaining wall and also our walkway and stairs. By no fault of our own, because we obviously bought it that way, and it's been there for, the house was built in 1930, and it's been there since then, I'm sure. Sorry. For the owners of 9 and 13 Boothby Ave, the same problems exist for the proposal that we previously had as they do for this current one. For 100 years, Clark Ave has remained a dirt paper road and has been undeveloped. We have used Clark Ave as a driveway to access our parking spaces and garage since the purchase of our home in 2006. Through multiple homeowners since the homes were built, Clark Ave has been used as a driveway for 9 and Boothby Ave, 13 Boothby Ave. Both 9 and 13 Boothby Ave have no access to our parking areas or garage via Boothby Ave. Any road development and utility placement would inhibit the use of our parking areas and garage. Sidewalks would further intrude on our properties. All the current and previous owners of our properties have paid for the plowing and upkeep of Clark Ave, at least on this far end where we are. For 19 years, we have mowed the grass and paid for plowing. The town and Red LLC has never helped with the upkeep costs to maintain this area. Also, the fact that we're talking about the trees are very close to in the back of our yard. there are trees back there where the street is, and they're over, if you're gonna make a road there, you have to cut down trees. Those trees are right there, literally within 5 feet of that area. So the fact that she's saying that they're not gonna be cutting down trees is definitely not true for the back area, because there are trees there that would have to be cut down. We live on a quiet dead-end road with very little traffic, and we, you know, it's just been a really safe area for us, and now we're going to feel like we're exposed, and our children and pets are going to be at risk being out there if cars are driving down there basically through our backyards. And we ask that you personally meet with us at the site before making any decisions, just so you can see exactly what we're talking about here. And we are clearly stating today that we will appeal any decision made today or in the future in favor of Red LLC. And we have put out posts and tape to mark how close Clark Ave runs to our home. It's within a few feet of the door, and we would absolutely have nowhere to park our 3 cars. We have photos and videos to present if possible. And then I just also wanted to know as a question about the water study. Did she properly inform us of that water study? Because we got one notification of it back in October, but the thing was dated for August of last year, the 29th. We didn't receive it until October. I would like to know when that study was completed and if that notification was actually legally done. And I have that here.
Do you have a copy of that?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. I'll give it back. Yep.
Notification we ever got. So I'm not sure that was done in the proper manner. Because this is the envelope that shows the date it was actually sent to us, which is October.
Do you have anything else?
I don't think so right now.
Oh, we made note of this. We'll address it, but we'll address everybody's at the same time.
Okay. I'll get that later, I guess.
All right, is there anyone else who would like to speak in opposition?
We can make a copy. Back to later.
Anyone on Zoom?
Come in tomorrow, give us a copy.
Okay, is there anyone who would like to ask a question or make a general comment? Okay,
Thank you.
I'll declare the public hearing closed and we'll take it up for planning board discussion.
Jamie, could you remind us how paper streets work?
So a paper street in the state of Maine is a street shown on a approved plan from some period in the past. And by approved, I mean recorded, because in early 1900s, subdivisions actually didn't get approved, they were just recorded. So I actually meant recorded plan. So in the state of Maine, municipalities every 20 years have to renew their interest in paper streets if we want to remain interested in them. That is not ownership of them. They are 100% correct. The city of Sanford does not own Camp and Clark Street. Sanford owns its interest in it for future development of roads. So a paper street is a road shown on a subdivision plan to provide access to the lots, rear lots essentially, access from the proposed street. If a municipality remains its interest in it, they do so that at some point in the future, those lots might be developed. If for instance, the two neighbors that spoke tonight, they could petition the city to relinquish our rights in the paper street, which would go through a formal process through city council, where we would actually give up our interests in the paper street. Typically, when that happens, half goes to one side, half goes to the other. So anybody that owns frontage on a paper street could go to city council and ask for that right to be relinquished. But City of Sanford has maintained every 20 years our interest in those streets. In the original application, the applicant did provide a letter from an attorney kind of explaining that process. I have personally confirmed, as well as I believe the neighbors, that city has maintained interest in these two paper streets in particular. So the applicant is requesting, so they're not technically going to own Clark and Camp Street. They're paying, or somebody is going to pay to put the private way on it, but that doesn't actually make it so they own that street. The street still is technically owned by the original development, with the interest to be able to allow to put a street on it later on from the city of Sanford's interest in keeping our paper streets. So there is no transfer of ownership. There will be no deed transfer from the city to Red LLC. There won't be a deed transfer from the original developer of this subdivision to Red LLC. They're just using the paper street standards in the state statute to be able to put the private way on it.
Could you, so, I mean, I think I understand why we hear things, these private ways, it is a form of development. Could you just help articulate that concern as to why the planning board hears
So in the city of Sanford, a lot has to have frontage. And we define frontage on a street, a road, or a way approved by the Sanford Planning Board. So for people that own rear lots, in order to be able to pull any permits, whether it's for a house or for a shed nonetheless, you have to prove you have legal frontage as defined in our ordinance. So in this case, they are proposing a private way. That is one of our town, city-approved methods to provide frontage, so that potentially future development, not only on the lot that Red LLC owns, but potentially some of the other lots that front on the new private way. So this private way, if it ever gets constructed, will also provide frontage for the rear lot that one of the owners spoke about, as well as a few others. So if this street ever gets constructed, it's going to provide frontage for not only Red LLC, but other lots within that original Ingleside subdivision.
Okay, thank you.
When was this subdivision approved? Back in the 20s?
Please vote.
Recorded, right?
Recorded. Well, it had to be approved by somebody.
Carl, do you have that date handy?
I think there's a note on the plan.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking for.
1930 something, right?
Okay, that's what I thought. Almost 100 years ago. And if it gets approved and built, who maintains it?
1922.
If it gets built, approved and built, who maintains it?
The homeowners association.
What about the lots
There's
that,
no homeowners.
what about the lots outside of the homeowners association?
So their draft maintenance agreement said that the existing homes do not have to pay for the maintenance.
But a future existing abutter, if there's other lots that abut that, how does that work out?
I would think that new structures built on the private way would then have to share the maintenance thereof.
Well, because the confusing part is, in the past, and with a lot of these paper streets, and a lot of development roads, usually the town takes over, or the city takes over the roads.
So in some subdivisions where they're built to public street standards, I will say 20 years ago, it was common practice for the municipality to accept the public street once it was constructed and verified it was constructed correctly. That is no longer common practice in Sanford.
No, I know, and that's what makes a paper street kind of confusing, especially with, there's still other people who own lots abutting this property. So like if Red LLC develops all 8 lots, another abutter wants to put in a house, they now have to bring it up to major subdivision road standards just for their one.
That would be correct. If once 8 more dwelling units are added to this private way, it would then have to be upgraded to public street standards instead of the urban zone amended private way standards.
Also of note is that if this private way is approved, it doesn't have to be Red LLC that builds it. Someone else could come in and pull the plan. So one of those other property owners could come in order to provide access to their lot.
So part of approving these is having the maintenance agreement, per what you just said, right? Will that maintenance agreement go with the property? So if the property gets sold, that maintenance agreement would then move on to whoever buys it and actually then constructs the road.
It would go with the sale of the property, correct?
Okay.
Which is weird because they don't own that property.
Oh, the sale of the private way would go with the sale of the lot that Red LLC currently owns.
And the maintenance agreement is verified prior to construction. So before we have any construction, after the planning board approvals, there's another meeting that happens called the pre-construction meeting, where we make sure all the conditions are met. Matt goes over the inspection fees and the performance guarantees and any other outside agency permits to make sure. So a lot of times the DEP permit isn't in yet when this planning board approves it, but it has to be in before construction. So we check off all of those elements at construction, and that's when the maintenance agreement would also be verified. So it would not be able to be constructed without a maintenance agreement.
Any other thoughts, questions for the board, from the board?
I'll just ask a clarifying question. So Red LLC owns 1 lot, is that correct?
That is correct.
And they're basically petitioning for the right to develop that paper street, is that?
They are here tonight to get approval for a private way to provide frontage to not only the lot that they own, but several other lots within the original subdivision.
Okay. Which they don't own.
Which they do not own.
Okay.
I mean, theoretically, if the road is constructed, those property owners went from a landlocked piece of parcel with no frontage to now a potentially buildable lot.
But landlocked lots are illegal, correct? You can't create a landlocked.
You can't create one, but these are legal lots of record.
Okay.
Well, and that's the reason the city maintains interest in these things.
Correct.
Right, so that we don't have these tracts of land that can never be developed in the city
Correct.
of Sanford, especially in the urban zone.
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions or from the board?
I guess I have one more comment, and that's with the septic and the sewer. And
Oh, yeah.
I know that the urban zone may lack some language currently about on-site septic and having to hook up to sewer, where residential development does have very strong language. And with the comp plan being updated and the zoning maps changing, this road could be approved and before a subdivision is proposed, and those rules could drastically change. So just as a, mention it, to the lot owners, that would be a concern of mine.
Yeah, so we were originally encouraging the applicant to put in a sewer line when they were proposing to develop their lot. And they had pursued some different options there that I'm sure they would maybe disclose to any future buyer. But the Sanford Sewer District does have a requirement that if there's an existing sewer line within 200 feet of a parcel, sorry, not of a parcel, but of
The actual structure.
structure, then you have to connect.
Yep.
So it's hard for us to know because there's a line within that vicinity of the parcel, but without knowing exactly where on a lot a building is going to be constructed, to know if it's actually within that 200 feet or not.
Yep.
So essentially, there is a potential, somebody could do a development on this lot without connecting it to public sewer,
Yep. Currently.
currently.
But with no subdivision approved, if we approve this and the zoning ordinances change, before a subdivision is approved, that could go out the window.
That would come down to the building permit, right? They would not be able to pull a building permit with a septic tank if it was no longer
So
allowed.
again, we're just looking at the private way today. So if.
I know, I just,
If Red LLC decides to build a single family, they could choose whether to try to place it where you can or can't connect to the sewer. If they decide to build a multifamily where sewers are, septics are no longer a good viable option, they would do the connection. If Red LLC gets approval tonight or another night, and then they decide to sell the property and say, you buy it, Jason, then you sit on it for 10 years, and in 10 years, the rules have changed. That means the developer, yes, you, that came in and bought it, are going to have to come back and get approval for a new septic, new sewer line. Yeah. So,
that's all, there's nothing, I can't not approve it because the rules do say that you can do it.
Yeah, and I think that's part of this is a little confusing because we're not actually developing or not even talking about any development besides the private way, yet we're putting in water.
Yeah.
So I just think it's a little confusing. I understand. I mean, I guess I don't really understand why we wouldn't plan for both in the urban zone, but I do think that causes some of the confusion here because we are hooking to public utilities, or half of them. Or getting a design approved for it. We may not even be constructing this right away.
Correct, and it would mean that even if that potential transfer that Jamie just said, and Jay bought it this year and wanted to build it this year and put in a sewer line, you'd have to come back before the board and get an amendment to the private way plan. It was not an inexpensive extension. I think that's part of the reason why it was not included, and because there's two different locations that it could come from, it would make sense to figure out what the development was going to be before you actually designed that sewer connection.
Yep.
Yeah, so I guess the confusing part is because we included the water. So had we not included the water, we would probably not even had this conversation.
Well, no, I'm just bringing it up because I know we're talking about the comp plan. I know the zones are going to change, and I know residential development does require sewer. It's just a comment that there is risk there with not having sewer.
Noted.
Can you explain the whole easement, that if this was to go through, how that easement would work for these two pieces of property that abut it?
what do you mean by the old easement?
If there was an easement put in place for this private way, or, because right now they're using this road to access their driveways.
So essentially, those two property owners have been utilizing their interest in the paper street for the last X amount of years. I don't know how old the houses are, but since the houses were built, they were utilizing the same provisions in state statute that Red LLC is looking to use, because again, the paper streets were drafted to provide access to the lots within the development. So they have used the paper street as their driveway for the last 30, 40, 50, 60 years, however old the houses are. So essentially, they are doing the same thing that Red LLC is looking to do, except they were only asking to use 100 feet of it, whereas Red LLC is asking to use 550 feet of it. So there isn't an easement per se. Again, they're utilizing the same paper street statute to be able to use that strip of land to access their lots.
The other change that would happen with the development of this private way is that we have standards for the maximum width of driveways now. And so that's becoming an actual driveway for those two lots. That maximum width for a single-family house is 20 feet. So one of the abutters was showing pictures of their driveway. It's technically I would say, a pre-existing non-conforming driveway width.
So just for clarification, essentially right now their driveway is on Boothby. So this is not a street right now. So we wouldn't recognize that as a curb cut along the paper street because it's not a street. It's just a swath of land through the woods at this point. Their actual curb cut is where that private way, that paper street meets Boothby. So right now they used, I think she said like 40 feet. Again, the driveway is considered the entrance from Boothby. Correct. The driveway starts on Boothby and veers off in two directions to your two houses. It's a play on words, which is hard in this case, but again, that is not a town-approved street. So we only recognize curb cuts off of a town-approved street. So right now, the town-approved street is Boothby. So we're saying the same thing differently, essentially.
Thank you. So I had two more questions. One was the water study. If we get to the bottom of that, I can pause on that. I do have a question about the trees and that. What trees are being saved, what trees are having to be cut as part of this plan. Could you explain, please?
Sure, Carl Beal again. If you look at the drawing that's on the monitor that Aaron pulled up, the green strips along either side of the right-of-ways are intended to be trees to be protected. The existing trees that are, located where the new private way is going to go, those existing trees will be cut. But those strips of trees, 8-foot strip, from the 50-foot right-of-way of the street in to where the sidewalk's going to be or the gravel shoulder's going to be. So that's what we're proposing, to retain those strips of vegetation, existing vegetation, and not plant new trees. That was requested by the staff. I'm not sure about the study.
I can speak on that.
Okay.
Okay. I appreciate your clarification on the trees.
So the form that was handed to us was a public notice of intent to file for Red LLC, filing for a stormwater law permit through the Maine DEP. So this was notification to the abutters that Red LLC was applying to the Maine DEP for a stormwater law permit application. So it's technically not a water study. It was their DEP permit for the increased impervious coverage for the private way.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yep.
Sorry, can I comment on the landscaping? So as part of the subdivision ordinance, we do require for a new road that there are shade trees planted along a new road. During that previous conversation, the applicant advocated that there are trees in place, so they wouldn't need to plant new trees. It's a little bit of a gray area now that we're in a private way plan only and not a subdivision. But if you would prefer that they plant trees, that would be within your purview to request a landscaping plan rather than just retaining the existing trees.
Okay.
It's hard to know how many trees are within that strip, as it's just a wooded lot right now.
And I'll follow up on a comment she just made. That is within the subdivision ordinance, which we are now out of. So we can't actually require trees to be planted if it's a requirement of the subdivision ordinance.
The planning board can request anything.
They can request anything,
Yeah.
just not based on the subdivision ordinance.
Right.
Okay. Thanks for that clarification. All right, any other comments or questions from the board? Do we have findings?
Yes, we do. Okay. 280-16-7A, utilization of the site. The standard is met because the proposed site plan reasonably uses the site.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? 5-0.
280-16-7N, solid waste disposal. This standard is met because the solid waste is proposed to be collected on site.
So I did that more for the creation of the private way, so any waste that they create during the private way creation will be removed. Because we're not doing actually any dwelling units at this point. So I did that on the premise that it would be construction debris or waste will be
Okay,
removed.
so this condition is met because the solid waste is proposed to be collected on site and removed by a private contractor.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? 5-0.
280-16-7Q, technical and financial capacity. The standard is met because the applicant has demonstrated adequate technical and financial capacity.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? 5-0.
280-16-7P, shoreland relationship. The standard is not applicable. The applicant is not proposing any development in the shoreland. The standard is not applicable.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? 5-0.
Actually, hold on just one second. I move that standard below, strike that comment, please. There is a portion of the land that was in the shoreline zone. My first stab at this, I didn't remember it was in the shoreline zone, so I corrected it and forgot to erase it from the top. So that one will come up again in the future.
Do I need to make a motion to strike that? Last motion.
Please.
I'd like to withdraw the last motion.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? 5-0. For removing the motion.
Mm, 280-16-7T, minimum standards. This condition is met because the proposed private way meets all applicable ordinance requirements.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion?
That's one specific.
All in favor? 5-0.
Okay, great. Group 1, Chapter 280, Article 16, Section 7B, access to the site, 7C, access into the site, 7D, internal vehicular circulation, 7E, pedestrian circulation. These standards are met because the development will not create hazards to vehicular or pedestrian traffic.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? 5-0.
Group 2, Chapter 280, Article 16, Section 7F, stormwater management, G, erosion control, H, water supply, I, sewage disposal, J, utilities, K, natural features, L, groundwater protection, M, exterior lighting, O, landscaping, R, buffering, P, shoreland relationship, and S, airport encroachment. These standards have been met because the applicant has provided adequate provisions to meet the standards.
Motion to approve.
Second?
Any discussion? All in favor? 5-0.
I do have a suggested motion as well. That is all of
That
them.
was the last
That
one.
was all of them, sorry. Yeah.
No, it's okay. Up, please.
These Planning Board accept the information in the May 6, 2025 summary report, grant the requested waivers, and find the proposed minor site plan and private way file 2025-03-I38-2 to construct a private way has satisfied the requirements of Article 16 of the zoning ordinance, subject to the following conditions. By June 2025, unless other arrangements are made with the planning department, provide 5 copies of revised plans to the planning department that adequately respond to issues raised in the review, which are part of the following condition of approval. A, update note number 5 on sheets C1 and C2 to read, "The private way as depicted may provide access for up to 10 total dwelling units in accordance with Chapter 280-16-7T3 of the Sanford City Ordinances." And then standard conditions of approval, number 2, performance guarantee, number 3, AutoCAD submission, number 4, signed recorded plat, number 5, outside agency approvals, number 6, inspection for escrow, number 7, pre-construction meeting, and number 9, alteration of plans.
Motion to approve.
Second?
Any discussion? Any discussion? All in favor? 5-0.
Just one second, Tom. So you guys mentioned that you want to appeal it. If you want to come in tomorrow, I can help you get the documents needed to do that.
Okay. It's been requested to take a 2-minute break. And then we'll move on to fire department.
It was something with a file.
It's the drone pictures. That's too far. Is that good, like that? And then if you want, the other one is here, that you can,
Where is it?
like the Google Drive picture has the whole, and then this one is here. Yes?
Okay. So ready to start on new business, file number 2025, TAC 17, TAC R12, TAC 20, TAC SP, Sanford Fire and EMS Headquarters. Jamie, could you orient us on this, please?
This is coming before you tonight. This will be the new Sanford Fire and EMS headquarters station located on multiple parcels, one of which used to be a single-family home, one of which used to most recently been Springville Nurseries, originally was Partners Bank, and then also the building that was most recently McKinney Embroidery Shop, previously a dry cleaner. So they have purchased multiple parcels. They have created a site plan to create the headquarters station. This did go to site plan a few weeks ago. It came out of site plan with some additional comments, which the consultant WBRC has provided responses to. I spoke with the Water District this afternoon. They still have a few minor comments they would like addressed, and I think there's a few other things that are still up for discussion tonight.
All right, thank you. Is the applicant here to brief us?
Good evening. Dave Woodward, 701 Forest Avenue, Portland, Maine. Thanks for having us tonight. Happy to be here for this exciting project that's been a long time coming. I guess I'll just go through a brief overview of the plan. The property's northwest corner of Mayflower Drive and Main Street, and it's 6.84 acres, and it's zoned urban zone. Fire station's 35,000 square feet, 1 story. It's got 5 main apparatus bays. It's got some other garage space for smaller SUV-sized vehicles. There's 12 bunk rooms on the northern portion of the building. There's administrative offices, there's a meeting and training room, a fitness and exercise room, and lots of equipment storage. Fire station is a permitted use in the urban zone. There's 88 parking spaces for staff and visitors, and that parking lot is also going to be used for emergency vehicle training maneuvers. So the fire department doesn't have to go somewhere else to practice. The triangle on the back of the building is a 130-foot tall antenna for emergency operations center communications, which will be, this will also serve as an EOC. We've filed with the FAA for an obstruction evaluation, which has come back being that there is none, so we're clear on that one. The main pedestrian access to the buildings actually faces Mayflower Drive and the parking lot. And there are 2 vehicular access driveways on Mayflower Drive. The one closest to Main Street is basically the main entrance for staff, visitors, and others to use the parking lot. The second driveway further down is primarily for returning emergency vehicles. This is a drive-through fire station, so they only go in one direction, which is out towards Main Street, so they circulate around the back and enter the bays from the rear and ready to leave immediately upon need. And then there's 2 vehicular access driveways on Main Street. One's obviously the large driveway apron for the emergency vehicles to come out of the 5 apparatus bays. And the second vehicular access driveway just to the east is a right-in, right-out driveway for authorized vehicles only. There's 4 garage bays in the southeast corner of the building that have the chief and others have their vehicles there, and that'll give them good, quick access in and out. The internal driveway on the north, the darker shaded gray, is, like I said, it's primarily for service vehicles. Once it passes the drive aisle that runs in front of the building, it becomes a one-way for only authorized vehicles and service vehicles. So it goes in a counterclockwise direction. We have more than 50 parking spaces, so we had a traffic impact analysis conducted by Sewell. We have, you guys are traffic geeks, it's 42 one-way trips at the peak AM hour and 16 in the peak PM hour. There's no significant impact on any off-site intersections. The proposed driveway access intersections will operate at good levels of service in both of the peak hours, and there's no service or capacity constraints. It's all at level of service A, so it's as good as it gets. Let's see here, scroll. In the back, for stormwater, we're in the, I hope I say it right, the Moosum River area, so we need to be cognizant of phosphorus. So we have the stormwater areas designed to be no large. There's 3 basins that are no larger than 3,000 square feet. That's all the DEP criteria. Basically, the majority of the stormwater goes back there and is treated before it flows out. Utilities are provided by Sanford Water, Sanford Sewer. There's a pedestrian connection from the existing sidewalk on Main Street, comes up, crosses over to the main entrance to the building. There's some other pedestrian accesses but that's not mostly for the public, that's for the firemen. There's existing trees on the property. Green, we're saving these existing trees along the Housing Authority property. There's a lot of pine trees back here that are being preserved, untouched in that back over there. There's a wetland in this corner, which we're not impacting. And we have, in your packet, there's a landscape plan enhancing the building, the parking lot, and the street edges. And that's it. I'm here for questions or comments.
Okay. After we get through the public hearing, if there are any questions, we'll be sure to bring you back up. Thank you.
Can I add a few points?
Yes, please.
Just for the record, the parking lot is currently what used to be a dry cleaner. We've done some phase 1 studies which show there might be some contamination underneath the existing building. We can't test for it till the building's removed. So the parking lot essentially is going to become the cap for the potential soil contamination if it's determined to be to the level where we have to officially call it a brownfield site and cap it. At one point in time, the fire station was actually going to be reversed, but because of the potential contamination found, it's better, we can't put living quarters over contamination without doing major stuff. You can, but not easily. So we reversed the site. We put the parking, because pavement is an approved cap under brownfields as that. And then second point was what, Jamie? Oh, just again for the record, this site via one property pin in the back right corner touches the Stanford High School's property. And because of that, the Maine DEP is requiring the city to amend the SLOTA, the Site Location of Development Act permit for the original high school development. So this one isn't going to have its own permit. It's going to be actually an amendment to the very large parcel of the high school. So this is going to be very heavily scrutinized by the DEP because of the scale of the high school project. It's making this one part of that larger scale project. So just again, put it on record that this is being reviewed under Maine DEP under the SLOTA for the original high school project. And it potentially, the parking lot is potentially going to be a brownfields cap.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other staff comments before we open public hearing?
Sure, I can add a couple. So this is obviously a project that the city is putting forward. It's for a city department. There was a lot of effort put in last year in order to advertise the need for a new fire headquarters, fire and EMS headquarters, sorry. And the bond was approved in order to fund this development. Again, as far as scrutiny goes, staff has been trying to evaluate it as any other site plan for full transparency. And so there's a couple of things to point out that I think are relevant to being consistent, and just a couple of things that are for the planning board to decide as well. So the first is that this is located in the urban zone. It is further away from the street than the 20-foot setback in the urban zone, but the code enforcement department has done the uniform setback calculation, which is allowed. So that's why it did actually meet that requirement. So if you take the calculation of all of the parcels in the vicinity that our ordinance requires, that uniform setback would be 62 feet, and this is proposed at 60 feet. So it meets that requirement. In case someone's thinking, like, why are we building a fire department further, why are we allowing it further away than the 20-foot? It does actually allow for that in the ordinance. The other topic is that the parking lot corner is slightly closer to Main Street than the building. However, they have proposed increased landscaping around the front of that parking lot, which we don't have the landscape plan pulled up, but we can do that, to shield that from view, because we're supposed to be creating a more kind of walkable environment along Main Street, and the landscaping will definitely add to that. And they've been able to kind of accommodate an increase in landscaping without affecting the site distance, because obviously emergency vehicles need to be able to see as they are pulling out. And then I think the last topic is the access management. So they are requesting a waiver for the curb cuts as proposed. When you have a site that has access from an arterial like Main Street and also a secondary street, proper access management is to have the access off the secondary street to allow traffic to continue moving on the arterial. They've requested the waiver for the 2 curb cuts on Main Street. One is so that the fire trucks can pull out directly onto Main Street. And it also is wider than what would normally be allowed for commercial construction, in order to, again, accommodate all the trucks pulling straight out of the bay. And then the other curb cut is meant to provide an exit and an entrance to the emergency vehicles that are the chief's vehicles, the SUVs that are accommodated on that side there. I guess I would say that we have differing opinions among staff as far as that curb cut, and so that waiver is up for the planning board to kind of read through the gray area there. We have a traffic study that proves the way it's designed allows for a non-reduction of the level of service for traffic. It is more of a curb cut than is currently on site, so they're reducing the number of curb cuts if you count up for the 3 parcels, but it's still an increase technically in the width of all the curb cuts on Main Street. We also had some discussions at Site Plan Review Committee of if there's an entrance there that's supposed to be just for emergency vehicles, will other residents take that and then end up in this kind of no man's land that's meant for emergency vehicles only? The applicant chose to keep it as designed, and I guess that's kind of the different sides of that equation. So on the one hand, it could be reduced in width and be made an exit only, as is the other extra wide curb cut is an exit only to allow emergency vehicles access to Main Street. But for convenience purposes and because it was designed to meet traffic standards, it's currently shown with an entrance as well.
Anything else?
Can I just add a clarifying comment to that? So the waiver request is essentially for the widths of the curb cuts. We have existing curb cuts on Main Street, so we're not asking for a waiver for the driveways on Main Street. We're asking for a waiver for the maximum width as prescribed. And then also on the right in, right out, Technically speaking, they're asking for a curb cut that's too wide if we make it all one. And there's not a scale on, well, there is a scale. I couldn't scale it properly to get the exact measurement of the center island from the right in and right out section. So to meet the waiver requirements, they might actually have to widen that center triangle a little bit to get 20 feet of separation between what is then two separate curb cuts. As a reminder, there were 3 existing curb cuts on Main Street for these lots. So they are not asking for any more curb cuts, so we're not asking for a waiver to allow curb cuts on Main Street. Essentially, we're asking for a waiver on the width of the fire truck access out of the station and a waiver in the reduction of separation between the 2 curb cuts for the in and out for the chief and staff entrance and exit.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from staff before we? Okay. All right, I will declare the public hearing open and open it up for anybody who would like to speak in as a proponent of this project. Anyone on Zoom? Okay, anybody who would like to speak in opposition? Anybody who would like to ask a question or make a general comment? All right, declare the public hearing closed, and we'll take it up for planning board discussion.
Is that parking lot going to be treated, I don't know if this is the right term, is it called a V-wrap? Is that what you're going to?
If the contamination is found to be at the threshold required, we will have a rewrap on that site, yes. We did testing of everything we could access to date, and the contamination was below the required limits for EPA. It is assumed that where we found some outside of the structure, the chemical spill obviously happened within, so it is assumed that the hits might come higher after we demo and are able to get to where the machinery actually was, but that's unknown at this time. We do have our brownfields contractor on staff to make sure we do all of this correctly as it becomes available to us.
One more question?
Go ahead.
Was there any, I don't remember if I saw this in the plans, is there any direct connection to Sanford High School, any driveway or pathway to that? There isn't.
We cannot create a driveway up Mayflower to the high school. That was actually the original plan. That was nixed through the original SLOTA process due to impervious coverage and sensitive areas. So there is currently a sidewalk as connectivity from Main Street to the high school for the kids to walk up that, but at this point in time, with current DEP requirements, we could not create an actual road there.
Can we pull up the landscaping plan?
Sure. Yeah.
Will save me from having to go through hundreds of pages in the submission to find it.
It'll be kind of hard to read. I can't zoom in.
You can
right?
zoom in a little bit,
Okay.
yeah, if you hit that plus sign. This is the tricky part. You got to hold down the scroll button. Yeah.
And just to embarrass our consultant standing at the podium right now, he is a landscape artist, architect, so he is very proud of his landscaping plan. He actually wanted to do about 3 times as much, but there wasn't enough room to do any more.
Told to control myself. Yeah,
So-
so there's a, yeah, I mean, this is, we have some mixture of deciduous trees, some evergreen shrubs, and some ornamental grass. So there's different materials, but there'll always be some landscaping that's evergreen during the wintertime. There's some future discussion about a wider pathway someday along Main Street, so we've set that landscaping back to accommodate that in the future if that does happen. Yeah, I mean, we landscape a lot around, but, what I'll call the public side of the building, but, this is kind of the face of the building, so it's nicely landscaped to enhance the building. Got some bunch of evergreen trees and some shade trees along the west property line adjacent to that property. I don't know, you got anything particular you want to talk about?
No, I just know that this was one of the concerns that was brought up in the summary report that was sent to us. I just want to make sure that we are satisfied with the screening along Main Street, especially for the driveway, understanding that there's obviously a concern with sight lines, especially where the road curves kind of around this property a little bit, and we're going to want to be able to fast act egress from this property. So,
Right.
yeah, I don't have any other concerns there. I think that is a.
I personally feel they did a good job of beautifying the existing frontage as well as providing safety for the emergency access.
I mean, if we're honest with ourselves, there's not much. I mean, this is a good start because not much of the properties along Main Street have had this attention.
Anything's an improvement.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you. Anything else from the board?
I can bring up one more thing. Is there going to be any signage in the roadway leading before and after?
There
the
is
fire
one
station?
sign proposed. Chief Susi drove around town to all the municipal buildings, and essentially he's going to do a granite and brick engraved sign to try to match other municipal style building signs.
So that's the actual signage for the building itself.
There is one sign on the front of the building.
Yeah, so this is.
I think there is a,
We're putting proposing to put a monument-type sign here at this corner because, this is the main entrance to the facility from Main Street. In the architectural, if I can breeze through here and not get everybody dizzy.
The building sign will
Yeah.
be just raised letters up over the.
On the building
doors
itself.
themselves,
Okay.
right on the front of the building.
I probably overloaded it.
the file is huge, so I'm surprised the computer's going that quick.
Yeah, look at this.
Yeah, I can hear it.
We're almost there.
There it is. So above the bay doors.
So those are the 5 bays. They'll have, like Chief was saying, there'll be some raised letters.
And so they're not intrusive on the road, they were backlit, so you'll see them, but they're like backglow lighting up over the top, so it's not bright light shining out in it.
Nice. That brings us to another question about lighting, too. Any lighting externally around the building, or is it on the building, or maybe within the parking lot, or?
Both.
So there's the photometric plan right there.
We have cut sheets in your package, but basically they're these larger blobs, for lack of a better term. These are site pole lights, and then the building will have wall packs to light up entrances and, where the garages are, where the entrances are, all cut-off fixtures. It meets the ordinance for the town for light levels and all that.
Again, they did a good job of keeping the light on the site shielded downward, but because of the status of this building, you actually have to make it so people can't hide around it. And so they got creative with the landscape and they got creative with the lighting to make it so it's functional, but not provide hiding spots as well.
If I could just one more thing on signs. Is there any signage, I guess, what I'm thinking of in the roadway before you get to the fire station? Is there anything that's going to say, anything that's illuminated or anything that's going to activate when emergency vehicles have to leave there at a high rate of speed?
We
any
have
kind
control of the lights.
You can turn the lights.
So the fire trucks have apparatuses on them that'll control the lights at Ocean State and at Irvin, essentially the two closest stoplights. Other than that, there is no other lights proposed at this time, right?
No, we'll have GPS access to both of those systems, and they'll work on door activation in an emergency situation.
So as soon as you open the doors on the garage, those lights are going to,
If it comes in as
an emergency.
an alarm, if they're going to do chores or going to training,
Right, yeah.
we can override that system, but any other time when the door's open, the lights will change in our favor. On top of that, the doors are now automatic close. So once the truck goes out, the doors will close behind you, so you don't go out, wait, and then drive off. Now you just go out and the doors will automatically come down. That's part of the new standard for it. And I will show you, I brought this up because.
You want the plan set?
No, this has just been a point of contention the whole time. This one little corner up in here, this one little dot right here, that's where we touched the school and caused this extended review of the property.
It's a big deal. It adds months to the DEP review process. Months.
That one little corner.
Because
they even
that
tried to
pin
give it
connects.
away. They even tried to give it away and they wouldn't accept it because we were on the uphill side of a municipal lot.
This is essentially because now the city owns a bigger piece of land. We would do the same thing as if a private developer came in and bought an adjacent property and it touched. It was
Well,
same sort of
if they
rules.
kept them in separate ownership, we wouldn't actually
No,
combine
I'm
them.
saying like same owner bought an adjacent property. That's really the scenario we're facing. It's just same owner.
Well, except in this case, we're not
But it's
combining the
at-
lots.
It's at a single point.
But single point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just want to touch on the curb cuts, because I know we've had curb cut requests before. I think we've granted them in an industrial zone for wider curb cuts. I don't personally have any issues with it. I guess I am a little confused with the whole island thing. I would love to see that island just gone, but
So the thought was right in, right out, and the island is how you force that to happen. If you have just a T, then it's harder for people to understand it's right in, right out.
And we
Although-
know the signs are really not the way we would want to do this, right? A sign on private property, I get it, the city owns it, but it's not really an enforceable sign as it is on a road.
But I'll use a prime example, like Dunkin' Donuts downtown, Aroma Joe's downtown, is supposed to be right out only. There's nothing stopping you from turning left, so 3 out of the 10 cars turn left. If you can't turn left, you're not going to turn left. That's the purpose of the island.
There's a similar island at the high school.
and
And-
people don't follow it.
Yeah,
That's what, yeah.
but, what do you,
So it is supposed to only be for emergency vehicles.
Yeah.
So hopefully, all the employees will understand how to utilize
I'm sure the chief will keep them under
curb
control.
cut. I mean, that was one of our concerns, that other people will end up using.
Could you put electronic gates in there that are closed and they have to activate them by the vehicle themselves?
That sounds like a liability.
Gates in Maine they're doable, but they're not, the winter in Maine is tough, ice in particular. Again, this is a fire station with fire chiefs that need to exit very quickly. If the gate is frozen in a snowbanking, the gate's not going to open.
Well, I know there was some concern about people just driving in there, taking a left off of Main Street to go into the parking lot.
So, if I can,
Because there's no entrance sign
can
anywhere. It says enter here.
we'll put this, can I just, on a little perspective. So, when we originally did this plan, we had a driveway coming out on the west side, full turning, a big driveway apron, a full turning driveway, and then Mayflower Drive. We're working with Sewell, traffic engineer, does a lot of work in town, is well aware of access management. She said, there's no way, we're not doing that. So we've revised our plan to take this drive and bring it into the main apparatus bay to remove one driveway. Access management, I slept at a Holiday Inn Express last night. It does suggest that if you are on a corner that your primary access is on the road of lesser trips, which would be Mayflower. This is where our main entrance is. It's on Mayflower Drive. right-in, right-out driveways are part of access management. They're one of the things that you can do. Just so, I mean, the chief has told me, I mean, they may have 8 visitors a day. If there's somebody coming here, that's not a lot of trips. So if you look at the traffic study, this driveway is actually, there's a chart in there, and at the peak hours, it's going to have one turn. One turn in and one turn out. So there aren't a lot of visitors coming here, and staff's going to know where to park and where to access the property. This is more, really, it's for emergency vehicle use. And if there's an errant person that misses the turn or whatever, there's only like 8 visitors a day. So I just kind of wanted to put that in perspective. I wasn't aware of the 20-foot separation. I don't think I've ever done a right-in, right-out drive with a 20-foot island, but.
Or potentially, the other option would be to narrow it down to the limits all the planning board's authorized to allow a wider curb cut in a commercial zone. So there's 2 options. Right now, it looks like you have 2 12-foot.
20-foot.
2 12-foot sections.
Correct.
I scaled it.
You don't count the flare.
Right.
So it's 24 feet wide here, split 2 ways. So they're 2 12-foot, you don't count the flare.
I'm not sure that it's 12, even where it's not flared.
Well, it's 24 here, and you split it in half. 24 divided by 2 is 12.
Yeah, it's 12 foot in, 12 foot out.
Actually, slightly less because the island's taken up half a foot on both, so it's actually 11 and a half.
If you scale it, it's.
I'm going by the 24 foot. I don't have to scale it. We have a measurement.
Okay.
So we can just waive, we can just waive the requirement, and that way they can make the island.
can.
However.
If you guys want it just like this, you have the purview to waive it, correct?
So a couple things on the access control. One, you have a sign there that already says authorized personnel only. Our ordinance is not really there to limit access to any site. It's to make sure we have safe traffic access and egress, right? So currently, the fire department has a back lot that is authorized vehicles only. That's just the nature. They probably don't have that much of a problem with it. And like you said, how many visitors go to the fire department on a regular basis? Not a ton. So I think we need to look at any type of access controls is really just looking at it from a traffic perspective, not access to the facility. That's my thought. I'd welcome others if you have something different. All right, I don't have anything else. Anybody else have anything? Okay.
So just for the suggested motion, are we going to grant them the waiver to keep it as is? Or are we going to ask them to change it, either narrow it down or widen the center?
As is.
As is, okay.
All right, do we have findings?
We do. Okay. 280-16-7A, utilization of the site. The standard is met because the proposed site plan reasonably uses the site.
Motion to approve.
Second?
Any discussion? All in favor? 5-0.
280-16-7N, solid waste disposal. The standard is met because the solid waste is proposed to be collected on site and removed by a private contractor.
Motion to approve.
Second?
Any discussion? All in favor? 5-0.
280-16-7Q, technical and financial capacity. The standard is met because the applicant has demonstrated adequate technical and financial capacity.
Motion to approve.
Second?
Any discussion? All in favor? 5-0.
280-16-7P, shoreland relationship. The standard is not applicable. The applicant is not proposing any development. The standard is not applicable.
Motion to approve.
Second?
Any discussion? All in favor? 5-0.
Group 1, Chapter 280, Article 16, Section 7B, access to the site, 7C, access into the site, 7D, internal vehicular circulation, and 7E, pedestrian circulation. The standard is met because the development will not create hazards to vehicular or pedestrian traffic.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? 5-0.
Group 2, 280-16-7F, stormwater management. Sorry, I should have said this different. Strike that. Group 2, Chapter 280.
Better.
Article 16, Section 7F, stormwater management, 7G, erosion control, 7H, water supply, 7I, sewage disposal, 7J, utilities, 7K, natural features, 7L, groundwater protection, 7M, exterior lighting, 7O, landscaping, 7R, buffering, and 7S, airport encroachment. These standards are met because the applicant has provided adequate provisions to meet the standards.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? 5-0.
That is all of them.
Right, do we have a draft motion?
We do. The planning board accepts the information in the May 6, 2025 and May 21st, 2025 site plan review committee recommendation of the planning board. Grant the requested waivers and find the major site plan file 2025-17-R12-20-SP to construct a 35,042 square foot single-story fire and EMS headquarters facility, a 130-foot tall antenna for EOC communications, 88-space parking lot, stormwater treatment basins, and other site improvements has satisfied the requirements of Article 16 of the zoning ordinance subject to the following conditions. I'm going to pause there. I spoke with Matt Provencher today. Coming out of site plan, there was one thing in his memo that said provide adequate access to the stormwater basins. In their written response, they said that they did alter the grade to basin number 2 to provide that access. Matt, was you able to verify that that meets the 15% requirement?
I think I have a scaled down version of the plan, so I couldn't get a proper scale on there. I think it's close and it's certainly doable, but I'm not sure. I guess it would be fair to verify that in the conditions.
So I think I'm going to leave that original note just for verification purposes.
Yep.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, now I'll continue. The first 3 of these are updates that the Water District have requested this afternoon, so the applicant has not heard these yet. They have been in close communication with the Water District over the last couple of weeks to make the amendments. These are fairly minor ones that, if they have any questions, I can address. Update the plans to show existing 6-inch service line will need to be removed at the water main by cutting out the 8x8 by 6-inch T on the corner of Mayflower Drive and Main Street. Coordinate with the Sanford Water District. And then 2, update plan showing all details noted to reflect minimum bury depth of all water pipe mains shall be 5 feet 6 inches. P11 still shows wrong depth. And then update plan to reduce new service line from 8-inch to 6-inch closer to the 2-inch domestic service tap, approximately 30 feet from the truck bay doors in the rear of the building. And then update site removals plan to accurately depict the required setbacks. So one of the notes coming out of site plan was they had some setbacks shown incorrectly. They corrected it on the site plan sheet, but on the site removals plan, it still shows the wrong setbacks. So just if you could delete that line on that plan, just so it doesn't cause confusion down the road. And then identify an appropriate access route to maintain the proposed stormwater treatment areas. That's just to verify that the access route proposed meets the requirements. And then standard conditions of approval, number 2, performance guarantee, number 5, outside agency approvals, number 7, pre-construction meeting, and number 9, alteration of plans.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion?
I got one thing. Are there any sprinklers inside the building?
This is a sprinkled, did you say is it sprinkled? This is a sprinkled building.
Okay, good.
I asked the same question at site plan.
Before I ask for the vote, are you set with the Water District's comments? Okay. All right. Any other discussion? All in favor? 5-0. Good luck. Right, so moving on to planning director's report.
So broken record as normal. We are still getting applicants' requests for pre-apps. We still have a backlog of pre-apps. We're still doing several a week. We had 5 items on yesterday's site plan agenda. We had 4 2 weeks ago, so projects are still rolling through. We are entering building season, so historically, during the summer, planning projects slow down because everybody's busy building. I don't see that happening with the requests coming in. So I think we're going to continue a fairly steady agendas coming forward. Aaron is still working on a comprehensive plan. We have had the request to revitalize the mineral extraction ordinance, although staff time right now is very difficult to find for that. But we have been requested to try to make that a priority again, so we're going to try to make that a priority again. So staff is continuing to be very busy. So as always, I want to thank you guys as the planning board members for your dedication, and also all of the developmental review team staff. We're working pretty hard here, so they deserve recognition.
Yes, thank you. Anything else?
There is a meeting, public meeting for the comprehensive plan next Thursday, the 29th, May 29th, in tandem with the Downtown Heart and Soul group. It is Thursday, thank you. Whew. I will be sending an invite out to everyone. If you'd like to stop by, it's at the Memorial Gym. There'll be some snacks provided by Above and Beyond Catering. There's some things to give feedback on for the Downtown Heart and Soul, as well as for the comprehensive plan. So it's kind of a group public engagement session.
So not a meeting, just a question and
It's like an open
answer?
house with a couple
Open house?
stations that you
I
can
just want to
come
make sure
through.
we're not going to cross any lines if we all showed up at the same time.
No, it's not a meeting. It is an open house.
Okay.
No official plan and business can be discussed.
Okay.
Yeah. That's it for me. Thank you.
Okay. Moving on to communications. Just for awareness, I will not be at the next planning board meeting because it is Sanford High School graduation. My youngest and last high schooler is going to be gone, so we'll be done with that. Anything else from the board? All right.
Second.
All in favor? 5-0.